I think telling stories is the most underrated but most needed skill consumers have in the modern world.
If you want to get a premium price for your car, you need to be presenting a premium product. I think that's really clear. Welcome back to episode 5, Craig.
Well, I'm glad you've counted correctly this time, Glad. Well done.
Thank you.
How's life?
Good. Been very busy since the last episode, but how's everything with you?
Oh, that time has flown since the last time we met, hasn't it? But all good. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about what makes a great advertisement for a used car. And I believe you've got a story for us.
Well, Glenn, I think life is all about telling stories.
Okay.
I think if there's one thing that I'm going to teach my children, apart from how to play rugby, it's about how to tell stories. I think telling stories is the most underrated but most needed skill consumers have in the modern world. But anyway, let me tell you my story. So, there was a guy, it's about 10 years ago. His name was Rob Walker, and he worked for the New York Times. He was a writer for the New York Times. And he wanted to understand the value of storytelling. So he went out with a colleague and he bought 100 insignificant objects. And that's actually the title of the piece of work, it's Insignificant Objects. He bought 100 insignificant objects from, they're called thrift stores in America. In the UK, I'd have called them a tat store. What do you call them in Australia?
Second-hand stores?
No, they're not second-hand. Oh. They're just the cheap stuff that...
dollar stores.
A dollar store. Okay, dollar store. There's a pound stretcher in the UK, that sort of thing. These items averaged around $1.25. So he bought 100 items. He then got a small group of writers together and said, right, we bought these items. I want you to create stories for 100 of them. And we're going to stick them on eBay and we're going to see what we can do, right? So these are things you could buy for $1.25. And it was a range of things. And one of the things that he bought a doll for $3, and he bought a lampshade for $1.50. And I think the lampshade that he bought for $1.50, they eventually sold for $125.
Wow. How do I get him to be a salesman in my car yard?
And all 100 items sold.
Mm-hmm.
And the increase in margin, or increase in profit, was 2,900% on the items that he bought.
So how do you do it?
So it was all about creating stories, and it was about connecting with the audience, right? Someone could have bought the same doll or same horses. There was a horse's head that was worth $1. Same lamp. But the stories that they created connected the consumer with the article. So it was, nice stories like, this was the lamp that my parents gave me when I went to university, and I studied under this lamp, and this lamp got me through my education and was a light to me. And they created a story which people just bought into, and they wanted to buy those items. They meant more to them than just the item themselves.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting. And the reason I think it's really interesting is I think that's something that is missing, certainly in this market, when it comes to selling articles. I think it's about creating those stories and connecting people to the article.
Okay. That's really interesting. Now that you mention it, I've seen a few ads or viral posts like that over the years where people have told stories about the journey they've had in their used car. Normally I see that, though, from private consumers. I don't think I've seen it before from a dealer.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously dealers can't sit down and write those kind of stories for every car. That'd be impossible.
Well, I don't know. I've written some pretty good stories with ChatGPT lately, Craig.
Well, I know that's a good point, right? Because ChatGPT and other AI platforms can write stories for you. There's no doubt about it. But I think, the consumers can definitely write those stories. And I think that what we'll get onto in this podcast is, I think if dealers think about creating those stories that connect people to the car better, they can secure better prices, they can get better interest.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is missing. It was funny, when I used to spend money on cars, I don't anymore, but when I used to spend money on cars, I was in the UK, and I bought a very nice Audi RS Avant, the big,
nice,
beautiful one. And it was the one with the Lamborghini 5-litre engine. And I absolutely adored this car. And when I bought it, I didn't know this, but when I bought it, the sales guy who sold it to me said, "Oh, by the way, this was owned by one of the Premiership footballers." And I thought, well, of course it is. Of course it is. And you probably won't know him, but he's a guy called Wes Brown.
Okay.
And Wes Brown played for Man United. And Wes Brown had this big, thick lock of ginger hair, curly ginger hair. And I kid you not, when I got in the car, in the headliner next to the sunroof was this big, thick ginger hair from Wes Brown that obviously got stuck when he was last driving the car. And I thought, well, that's a story. They probably could have got more money out of me if they'd have said that it comes with Wes Brown, especially for me.
Yeah.
Wes Brown's hair.
Yeah, well, it really justifies the premium you probably paid for that out.
Well, probably. Yeah, buy this car, it gives you hair, which would have been a good sales line. But no, I think let's go back to the subject at hand, right? About how do you... we've done a podcast previously about the Chinese market and what that could do to the market. We've talked about floods and what that could do. And I really think, in this market where, sometimes there isn't value for second-hand items. People just don't see the value in second-hand items. And I think it's up to the seller to create that value through telling some stories. I don't know if you've ever seen any, apart from consumers, good descriptions from dealers, for example, that have set themselves apart.
Yeah, I think, some obviously dealers can't tell a story. They can't be like, we purchased this car 10 days ago from a consumer. It's probably not a very interesting story, but I think, dealers can really craft stories about what's unique about this car, if it's something unique about the engine or about this model. So I think there's a few ways they can weave a story into their advertisement. It might be a little bit of history about the brand, a little bit of history about the model, or a little bit that's unique about this specific car, whether it's specific features. Instead of just saying sunroof, it's got a full glass panoramic sunroof. You can build this out, and you can paint a picture. And I think it's not only just in the advertisement; it's when the customer comes into the showroom. Do you like to take long drives? How much are you going to enjoy opening this sunroof on a cool winter's evening, or on a morning drive up to Jebel Jais?
Yeah,
so I think there's an opportunity to carry that over to the showroom as well.
100%. And I think I can show you adverts on our site where cars are over 1 million dirhams, and in the description it says we do finance, we do part exchange, and they don't even reference the car.
Yeah.
And I think, there are the good stories I've seen from dealers where they say things like, we supplied this car from new. We know the owner, we've serviced it, we've looked after it, we know this car's in great condition, the owner's a lovely guy, and he's a petrol head. And, there are nice stories about the previous owner. There are stories from owners who say, we love these cars. They rarely come into circulation. We hardly ever see these cars. Now, you can keep doing those for prestige cars and exotic cars, but obviously you can't do that for the volume car, right? You can't be sitting there in a volume dealership saying, it's another Nissan, we love Nissans, right? But there are stories you can craft around that Nissan.
Yeah.
It's a no-smoking car from someone who's really cared, that put attention into it. It's got a full service history which shows it's been looked after, and
low mileage,
and just pull out those key points that consumers want to hear.
Yeah.
I want to know the owner looked after it. I want to know it's got a full service history. I want to know that it didn't have a smoker.
Yeah.
I want to know this dealer thinks it's a good car, and I'm reassured it's, they can build those kind of stories.
The other thing I see dealers do is I see them building value, especially if they're a certified pre-owned dealer, in their certified pre-owned package. How many point check did it go through? What did we check for? What's the warranty? What's the after sale? What do you think is sort of the best practice there, Craig?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The approved dealers who invest, millions into these programs need to shout more about the benefits of the approved program. And I think, it'd be interesting, maybe we should do a podcast about it, but I think actually few consumers in this market probably know the benefits of most used approved programs, because I just don't think approved dealers push it hard enough. It's almost like an afterthought. Oh yeah, by the way, this car's done 230 point check, where it needs to be at the forefront of the storytelling, really. Why do they do these checks? They do these checks to make these cars as good as a brand new car. Now, if I read the advert, do I get that story from the advert? No, I don't get that story from the advert.
Yeah, I think certified pre-owned dealers, they want to command a premium price for the certified car, and they probably should. A lot of them only sell the best cars, and the ones they reject might end up in other places in the market, or they don't trade them. And then, 9 times out of 10, they'll be backing it with a really solid warranty. So there really is a lot of value there, which they can build and generate a premium price for that car.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And actually, they probably did sell that car from new.
Yeah.
And they probably did service it all the way through.
Yeah.
And they probably do know the owner, so they can really craft some nice stories about that. What do you think holds dealers back from creating these kind of stories and better descriptions for their cars?
From my experience, it's just as simple as systems and processes. It takes a little bit of work. I can remember when I was running dealerships, we used to put somebody responsible for writing the stories. So we would have a standardized blurb that maybe built value in our certified pre-owned program. And then there would be a person on the team, normally a salesperson, someone who understood the product, or the person who traded the car. And they would be responsible for crafting that story.
Yeah, and I think that's the really important thing, isn't it? Someone owns that, and it is a skill, right?
Yeah.
I think what I see in some dealerships is it's an admin chore that someone in the back office has to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes these people, and I'm not being rude, but they don't even drive cars, so they don't.
They need to understand what they're selling. They need to be passionate about the product, and I think that's always the best salesman on the showroom floor, but it's also the best salesman to write that story. Someone who's got a bit of passion, someone who's got a good command of language, who can put that passion in words.
Yeah, we deal with a UK dealer. I'll actually reference him, Clive Sutton, and he owns the business and it's prestige vehicles. Mm-hmm. And he actually writes his own descriptions, and he pushed it onto social media as well. And this guy's a petrol head. His descriptions are beautiful. He really knows the car. He talks about the car. He talks about the owner. He talks about the condition of the car. He really spends time on crafting those stories.
Yeah.
Now, to scale that is difficult, I think.
True.
I think ChatGPT can definitely help.
Yeah.
But I think it's just about making sure at the dealership level someone is accountable for this.
Yeah.
Which 9 times out of 10 isn't the case.
Just about systems and processes, putting a system in place, refining it, monitoring it, and simple systems and processes like this can really add a few % to the bottom line.
Massively, and I think that's the thing. I think people don't get the value of it, and I think it'd be great to do a test to see what. I mean, maybe we do this test of.
Maybe you and I go buy a car for next episode and see if you can write.
That would be a good challenge, right? You can't describe it, and I write a story and see if we can get who gets a better price point. I like that challenge. But okay, so look, obviously storytelling is a big. I think it's a big part of selling anything, not just selling cars, but selling anything. I think the other thing, obviously, I mean, pictures, it goes without saying, is the one thing. I mean, people view with their eyes, and pictures are so important. And I think, to be fair now, most dealers are pretty good at taking photographs, right? There are still the odd one or two that aren't. But I think this market's now got photographs. I think they're moving into videos, which is great. And I think, look, certainly on our site, you can upload 30 images, if not more. So, upload as many photographs. Consumers do not get bored of looking at photographs. No. And if we look at our stats, every photograph that's uploaded will get looked at. If you put 5 on, it'll get looked at. You put 30 on, it gets looked at. So more photographs.
I spend my Saturday night browsing car photos on the DubiCars website.
You need to get out more. Maybe that's the next podcast. Glenn needs to get out, and we'll do something around that. Photographs are definitely a key thing. And look, then the third thing, obviously, I think is price, right? Because people have connected visually, they like the story, now they've got to connect with the price, and you're the man for that. So how do they make sure they nail that?
Well, it's really straightforward, actually. It's just a matter of the price of that car versus the market price. So to work that out, you just need to work out 2 things. The market price, which you can use a tool like ours or the pricing calculator on the DubiCars website to try and establish the market price. You can have a look at other listings and then work out where this car sits and then price it to sell, or as per your stocking strategy. Maybe for the first 14 days, you price it at 102% of market price, then at 100% of market price, then at 97%, and you keep revisiting that pricing decision every 7 to 14 days. But it's really a straightforward process.
Yeah, and I think it's that constantly going back and reviewing it, not leaving it 2 months or 3 months to review it. It's reviewing it. Is this thing actually working? Have I got the right price point? I think the other thing, to make sure you get the best price point, I mean, we talked about a story and it kind of weaves itself into that, is, making sure you get the right spec of the vehicle. Now, what I see a lot of times over here is dealers say top spec. And you look at his cloth seats.
And they're all top spec. They're all full option, actually.
A full option. Full option or top spec, yeah. And that kind of really devalues the top spec, full option, spec, because you can see from the photographs that it's got cloth seats or it's got the 8-inch screen or whatever else, and you just know that's not the top spec. And people who know cars will know that's not the case.
Well, the seller loses all credibility. If they don't know what spec the car they're selling is, how can anything in that ad be trusted?
Yeah. So I think, spend the time to get the right spec and be honest with the consumer, and don't just round up to the nearest top spec. Really try and get the right spec. And actually engine size, and it's something that we're going to tackle in DubiCars so people can actually see the engine size. That's a key thing for consumers as well, actually, is make sure they know the engine size. We talk about cylinders at the moment. People actually want to know what's the capacity of the engine. Is it a 4 litre, 5 litre, 1.5 litre?
Especially when you can buy the same model car with different engine capacities, which sell for different prices.
Yeah.
And often you can't tell without looking at the engine or looking at the VIN specification of the car. And as you know, a lot of the dealers use our tools specifically for that, to make sure they're getting the correct VIN-specific details of the car, options, trim, engine size, because it makes a real difference in price.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, the next time we meet, we'll have done this test. I'm going to go and buy a cheap car, you buy a cheap car. Let's see, because I know for the best premium. But I guess to round up on this episode, I'd just say a couple of things. I think firstly, though, this telling stories and being able to tell stories is really important. It's an important skill for everybody, but certainly for the car market, you've got to learn how to tell stories and connect the audience to their product to get stand-through, setup and stand-through. I think the other thing is, they've got to make sure they price appropriately high, so that just puts them out of the market immediately. Yeah. They've got to be honest with the consumer around the specification of the vehicle.
Yeah.
And if they've got a dodgy photograph, don't put it in, right? There's no point putting it. It's not just about volume, it's about quality. If there's 30 ones bad, just don't put the bad one in, put the 29 good ones in, and keep the visual aspect high through photography. So they are my top tips. Anything from you?
Sounds good to me. If you want to get a premium price for your car, you need to be presenting a premium product. I think that's really clear.
That's a good roundup.
Perfect. Thanks, Craig.
See you next week.
See you.